All right, let's get started. Welcome and thank you for joining today's Distinguished Speakers Series event at Bakersfield College, hosted by the Bakersfield College Student Government Association, BCSGA, and the Office of Student Life, in collaboration with the Business Management and Information Technology Department. These webinars and many other student-centered events are made only possible by the BCSGA KBC Student Services Sticker Program, which students have the option to purchase at the time of registration. For more information, please visit bakersfieldcollege.edu/BCSGA. Just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. This webinar is streamed to various social media posts and will be recorded to be made available for up to 2 weeks after the event for students. Closed captioning is available by clicking the closed caption button on the lower part of your screen. This is a webinar event, thus you will not be able to show your video or talk through your mic. The chat feature for this webinar is available to engage with the panelists and other attendees. All inappropriate questions or comments will be removed immediately. To pose a question, in the lower part of your screen, you will see the Q&A button. This is to submit your questions to us. We will review the questions and ask them at the end of the speaker's presentation. We may either respond to the question live or via the Q&A module. The Distinguished Speakers Series brings community leaders from around the world to Bakersfield whose achievements have had national or international significance. Each speaker was proposed by BCSGA by either a department or a faculty member. Collaboration between many entities on campus make these events successful each year. The events are free and open to the public. All events this year are scheduled via the Zoom on a virtual platform. For more information on future speakers, please visit bakersfieldcollege.edu/student-events/DSS. Please note today's webinar will be recorded. In the case of technical issues, please stay online as we work through them. In case of disconnection, please join us on Facebook Live at facebook.com/SGABC. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A module so the moderator will be able to respond or ask live at the end of our speaker's presentation. You may also post questions on our social media outlets, and we will capture these questions from there. As a reminder, we will be having the recordings available to you through either Facebook or on our YouTube channel. Without further delay, I welcome Professor Hal Mendoza, Chair of the Business Management and Information Technology, to introduce today's distinguished speaker.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Hal Mendoza. Gordon Bellamy is a visiting scholar at the USC Games and head of the USC Bridge incubator program, helping to cultivate the next generation of leaders in the craft of game development. He has played key business and product leadership roles at Tencent, Electronic Arts, and as designer on Madden NFL Football and MTV, and consulted for numerous companies in the industry. He's the 2018 recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Game Developers Conference and was featured on Nickelodeon for Black History Month for his 25+ years of contributions to the game industry. Gordon is currently the president and CEO of the Gay Gaming Professionals and is on the board of directors for the Wave VR. Bellamy has served as executive director of both the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences and the International Game Developers Association. So please join me in welcoming Gordon Bellamy.
Unmute there, and thank you for having me. Whoops, they're getting my slides. And hello to everyone out there on Facebook and Discord as well. It's exciting to be here at all the facets of Bakersfield College. So we're gonna talk today about esports and education, career development, and equity. This talk is for all of you, so questions are super welcome and encouraged. This really is a conversation. And I just want to say thank you, Professor Mendoza, Dr. Damiana, and all of you for having me here today to talk to you. So little about me, just structurally, I know when I go to a talk, I want to know the table of contents so I know if I'm in the beginning, middle, of end. So this is our table of contents. We're just going to talk a little bit about my origin story for some context, some history of esports, a little bit about how esports and education intersect, and I think most importantly, how esports equity and you as students and as our sort of next generation of creators and engineers and producers intersect. So me, my origin story. So I come from a family of lawyers. So by that, I mean my father is a lawyer, my brother is an attorney, and I'm in fact named after my dad's law school attorney. I'm sorry, law school professor, Richard Gordon. So there was a big expectation of me that I also would be an attorney, that I also would follow down this pathway. So I went to college, like all of you, and I followed that path, and I was going to become an environmental attorney. My specialty was hydrology. So that's the treatment of water. And that's what I thought my life was going to be. And what happened to me was, a field trip. And so we went on a field trip to the water treatment plant where you learn how they make the some of the sewage and reclaimed water back into drinking water. And it's great. It's an important craft. It's important, and I hold all of those fellow hydrologists in the highest regard. But I knew for myself that wasn't me. That I wanted no part of being there. I didn't want to be the boss. I didn't want to be entry level. It wasn't who I am. And so I had to follow a new path. And I decided, that college was about deciding what you want to do and deciding who you want to become, and that I wanted to follow my passions. And back then, I liked two things: sports and video games. And so I wrote for the school paper. I played lots of intramural sports. I'm not the fastest or the strongest or the tallest or any of those things. So I wasn't, playing any varsity athletics, but I loved video games. I spent a lot of time at the arcade. And so I decided I was going to either try to work for one of two companies. One, a fledgling network called ESPN, or two, a fledgling game company, which is called EA Sports. And so I applied to both. I, got my resume and sent it off to HR, and I waited, and I didn't hear anything back. And I was discouraged. I was like, I thought, I worked very hard in school. My grades were, what they were. I thought, of course, they would want me. I would call HR and see if there was some, mistake being made. But lo and behold, they were both passing on me, and that was hard because I didn't have a plan C, right? Like this was it. And so what I decided to do was to take a different approach. And so you see on the screen, there's a game called NHL Hockey, and it's actually still with me here to this day. What I did was I actually cold called the people in the credits for the game at their desk, every single one of them. And I'd call and be like, "Hi, this is Gordon. Hi, this is Gordon, engineering student from Harvard. Hi, this is Gordon. I love your game. ... And I called and called and got hung up on a lot until I got to literally the special thanks. And by good fortune, a man named Jim Simmons took my call and said that he thought my enthusiasm was super authentic and that he believed me that I wanted to make sports games, and that he could get me an interview for an entry-level position in quality assurance at Electronic Arts if I could get out there to California to do it. And so I found I was not going to be lead engineer, even though I was studying engineering, that I would start at the entry-level rung, of this craft. But it was my passion. And so I saved up. I got a plane ticket and I flew out here to California, where where many of you are, where I am here in Southern California, all in to get this one job. So the way it worked back then would be to become a quality assurance person, they would have you show your ability to test alpha software. For those of you who are not engineers in the game space, alpha software means that all the features are in, but there's bugs. So you can play, you can navigate around the game, but there's bugs here, there, and everywhere. And they put you in a room with a yellow legal pad, 8.5 by 14, and give you an hour to show what you're made of. And it could be any game. Now, because my good fortune continued, I actually got a game that was called Bulls versus Blazers, which was an NBA basketball game. So literally, it was like a montage of my life of sports and video games and my passion intersecting in the hour that I needed it. So I was successful, in the test, and they said, "This is great. Why don't you come back this summer, and we look forward to seeing you in June." I decided that I was already working in Electronic Arts, that I wanted to be as additive as I could from day one. So when I went back to Boston, I got a fax machine. And I began faxing all the teams in the NFL so that we could have the most up-to-date rosters possible for Madden Football in the fall from my dorm room. And so when I arrived at EA at day one for orientation, I had my Madden binder ready to go, ready to be added to the team, ready to contribute in any way that I could to making that game as great as it could be. That is a trait that's sort of valued at EA, right? Like doing sort of above and beyond what's expected to help the project move forward. Long story medium, I ended up being the Global Rookie of the Year for Electronic Arts and clawed my way up the ranks to be the lead designer of Madden Football, which I led for 2 years. And it was great because I learned so much about working with others, like as teams grew in size. Obviously, so much about the difference between playing games and actually creating software, and about service, like service to customers, right? Because games are made to be played. Games are an ongoing relationship with people who have paid for them and meeting their needs versus meeting your sort of authored goals. I also learned a very important thing. Oh, I see your question, Jason, real time. How are QA testing qualifications compared to today's standards? Well, I'll tell you a real difference, Jason, just real quick, is that often testing today is outsourced to testing companies, where that is what they do and that's the service they provide. Back then, so I think because there's so many people who play games now, that the qualifications which are super important are reliability, right? Will you show up, and 2, your ability to work with others in large teams. Back then, teams weren't that large, but now the teams are so large that the ability to communicate and get along with other people is as important as the testing skill itself. And that's probably the biggest difference. Also, QA now has an engineering facet to it that it didn't really have back then. So like automated testing and developing tools for QA is a whole craft that exists now. So if you can imagine, like most games now are way too big for someone to manually explore all the iterations of what is happening, right? And so most of human testing is about like edge cases and human experience, versus testing does everything work, like in a game, does every sword work with every shield, is something which is now more automated and done with software tools. So So the qualifications are different, and that you could now come in through what I would call maybe a design and production track, like where your intent is to develop the features of games, and also now through an engineering track, which is more how do the games and systems operate, and that's a huge difference. So yeah, so I came in through that. For even though I was an engineer, the craft that I'm talking about didn't exist yet. So I came in through a design and production craft, and that's what I focused on. Another thing that I really learned, which was super important, was about ownership, right? Because people ask you like, "Oh, you design Madden, are you super rich?" Because well, no, like the stockholders are, like the people who own, right, who own Madden, generate a lot of revenue, and so what we ended up doing was starting our own studio, and that sort of entrepreneurship was the biggest decision that I ever made, because we had to leave EA, like leave, a very popular franchise that's obviously thriving to this day, in order to do our own thing and to live our own dreams. And it can be hard to perceive when you're in school that sometimes when you're working for a corporation that you don't own, well, you're living someone else's dream, right? Whether that be the stockholders or the C-level executives, like their dream, right? Versus being sure to carve out your own dreams and your own value that you could be building. There's no barrier nowadays. You could be making, creating, distributing games from wherever you are. And so this decision turned out probably to be the most important one, just financially and for the trajectory of my career in my life. Like that's why I have the house that I'm in, the car that I drive, all because we left the big game and started our own smaller studio. We grew it up doing extreme sports games. So Tony Hawk is probably before all of your times, but Tony Hawk was really big. And so we made every sort of extreme sport game alongside it. So we made like inline, aggressive inline. We made, like skiing games. We made Dave Mirra BMX. So everything's like an extreme sport that you see at the X Games besides skateboarding. We ended up selling that company to Activision. And for once we had ownership, and because of that, we made much more than we made working for Electronic Arts, and had more autonomy over how we used our talent to create experiences for people. So you've heard a little bit of my bio about my career. So one of the things that I found to be a common thread through my career is my purpose. And for me, my purpose is I love helping people get from point A to point B who don't necessarily know how. And you might go, well, what does that mean? So, for example, for me with Madden, so working on Madden for me was about the fact that I love football. I grew up loving it. And video games were a way of enjoying football when it wasn't on Sundays. So you could enjoy it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday because of video games. And I felt and knew that I wasn't alone in that love. Later in my career, I pivoted to become more developer focused. So I think you heard I ran the International Game Developer Association, the AIS. And what those roles were about helping people who were committed to the craft, like me, have better careers and lives. And very important, there's a difference between a career and a job, right? So I know with our students at USC, perhaps here too, there's a lot of emphasis on, can you get a job? Will you get an internship, right? True, those are important. But what's super important is that you chart yourself a path towards a career where you get to iterate and try different things that align, right, with your skills and your passion. In fact, many of the jobs that you're going to have, 5-10 years from now, don't exist. And we'll talk a little about that later, but you can't design your exact path yet, especially if you're going down a technical craft or towards a game craft now, because things iterate and evolve so fast, so rapidly. So I spent the middle part of my career focused on developers, whether it be from a business side and business development or in a career development side with organizations and trade organizations. Now, in this part of my career, I'm devoted to education. So education is about y'all. I mean, that's why I'm here. Like the helping the next generation live their best lives and have the same opportunities that I had, but their own version, is what motivates me. And so I'm part of the faculty at USC Games. And if for those of you not familiar, so the way the games program is set up there is a design track where you learn design and production games. There's an engineering track where you can pursue all the facets of game engineering at the undergraduate and master's level. Hopefully, maybe some of you will join us in the years ahead. And so those are the main academic tracks. There's also the extracurricular facet of USC Games. And what that involves are things like content creation. So for those of you who watch Twitch or YouTube or follow people on TikTok or Facebook or even Discord where you are, navigating those ecosystems is a core extracurricular activity at USC. Also, esports. So the competitive aspect of games, which now for your generation are more relevant than traditional sports. So I focus on those as well as on the third pillar, of course, career development, which is how do you demystify getting jobs and getting internships and charting a course for a career when you don't necessarily know what even all the jobs are going to be down the road. We have a program at USC called the USC Bridge. And what the USC Bridge is specifically about and why it's called a bridge, it's between evolving, helping young people evolve and grow from the academic practice of learning and evaluation into the professional craft of like service. So authorship to service. So often, in school, like you write a paper, did I get an A? Right? I made this project, teacher, will you validate me? A, did I get a ribbon? Gold star. Service is about a relationship with community, relationship with customer, which relationship with business, relationship with coworkers, which is ongoing and persistent and requires a different set of skills, or at least a building on the set of skills of the team building that you may learn in school. And so we have a bridge program which is designed to take promising projects and project leaders and go, well, this is great what you're doing creatively. Well, how could we talk about if you wanted to raise money to build more? Or how do you approach hiring people to join your team who are not assigned to you in class, but you have to actually go and recruit them and keep them working with you? And lastly, commerce. How could you sell this? If you were going to sell this to people, well, what does that relationship look like from their discovery of your game on Reddit or Twitter, through your marketing, through your sales, through their reviewing and when they feel ownership of your game and are talking about it out in the world? Oh, thank you for your time. I wanted to work on the next BioShock game. Hold on a second. Would you advocate cold calling to get in? If not, what is your advice? Thank you very much. Okay, so Caitlin, one, I guess it depends. There's so many ways you work on BioShock. So it really depends what facet you want to work on BioShock to do, because some parts of BioShock will be run out of the publisher, right, who are dealing primarily with the audience consuming BioShock. And some people are more inward facing, like developing the game BioShock at a studio. And then within that studio or studios, because even parts of that development might be outsourced, there's a whole host of roles. Here's how I would begin. Number one, I would go to Gamma Sutra, which is a website, which is the core community website of the game development community. And be looking at how people in the game industry talk about their craft, how jobs are promoted, that thing. Oh, number 2, oh my gosh, the Game Developers Conference, Caitlin, we're going to help you like a bullseye. This is great. And I'll get back talking, but we're going to help Caitlin. So Caitlin, for the first time in your life, the Game Developers Conference in March is free. And you can watch it from home, okay? If I were you, I would go to the Game Developers Conference, right, for free and really watch and study Here's why. Your next step would be to go onto LinkedIn and look up people who worked on BioShock in whatever your craft is, okay? And you'd be like, oh, hey, I'm a student, but my passion is to bring value to BioShock, right? You've already worked on BioShock, right? What were your key steps to get there? Could we spend maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes on a call together, right? Because what you're going to want, Caitlin, specifically, are people who see your success as their success inside the industry and can offer you context, right, for your question because they worked on a BioShock game before, right? And so not only they know what it is to work on one, they know what it is to get onto the team that worked on one. And so they could very specifically help you on your journey, okay? And what you'll probably find, and this is the sort of thing of like putting your eggs in one basket, there are probably a host of experiences which are either like BioShock as creative output or places that are like to work that work in the same way that BioShock's team develops that would not have all your eggs in one basket, right? Like, because ultimately, once again, career, not job, you want to work in BioShock for some reason. That reason is either the aesthetic of the game as output or things you've learned about how the team works. And so you want to know, where can I work that's sort of like this? It'd be like if you, I don't know, you want to play pro football, but I want to be on the Rams, but there's 30 some teams. You could also play for them. You sort of know about the ecosystem of choices. Last thing for Caitlin, super important, I'll just put it in the chat real quick, is game dev map. Okay, which you should totally know about if you want to get into the space. This is the way for you to see really the aquarium, not the fish, right? And really understand the opportunity to work from a place of abundance versus scarcity. So scarcity is like this, like I can only work on BioShock or I'm a failure, okay? That's a position of scarcity, right? And that happens, God, so many times. People are like, I've got to work at Blizzard or bust, right? But no, there's actually a fantastic ecosystem of thousands of development studios, big and small, right, that you could be working in on your path, right? And nowadays, because of distributed development, you can do it wherever you are. Like, and once again, this is I've gone down a path, but this is important. People talk about unprecedented times, and it really is. And obviously, I hope all of you are healthy and safe. But inside of that health and safety, you're in a time where like the bias of distance, right, has been totally disrupted. So you can be in Bakersfield, California, or Binghamton, New York, or Bangladesh and do the same exact work. And so what that free market opportunity does for you, it means that for the first time in games history, you could literally apply anywhere, okay? You can literally apply for any internship, any company that's like, laser drilled about what you're about and have an expectation that you'd be able to perform some of your work at least from home. And that's something that's happened. I mean, once again, I've been in games over 25 years. That all happened last year. So where work from home is a default thing, not a exceptionalized thing. And in fact, now companies have been forced by nature to optimize for work from home, right? To the point where it's going to be super interesting as companies have the choice to work from offices to create new hybrid models, which is we're going to have a great advantage in as a young person, because for you, it'll be how things always were, right? And the things that you're learning, I was talking to the professors about this before this talk, there's some best practices that people of your generation are going to have born of this time that you're going to dictate how things are for older people and for younger people, because it just happens to be your time. Anyway, so, but yes, Caitlin, great question. But I hope some of this like applies to everyone who, wants to. Here, let me put the other link in the chat real quick, because everyone can use this information. Sorry, everyone who wants to get into games. These are 2 sites that you ought to go to. And then, and so, God, I think I'll get this right. Forgive me if I don't get this right. But here, GDCon, I think that's right. That's Game Developers Conference. Once again, for the first time in your life, it's free. And, oh my God, I just got an email about this. If you sign up for it before, I think it's February 6th, well, then you get something called the GDC Vault free for a month. And the GDC Vault is like all the past year's talks and information. So no matter what you're interested in, okay, whether you're into art or QA or engineering or design or anything, okay, there is this repository of videos, which is a natural format for your generation, that you can just sit and watch and absorb and just get as smart as everybody else. Like right now, it's been democratized, right? And it's so funny. Your question really sort of crystallizes this for me. This is a once in a generation opportunity that all of you have who want more to specifically pursue knowledge, specifically pursue employment, and I guess as importantly, specifically pursue just broad engagement with the game industry, because everybody's home. Everybody's on Twitter just like you. Everyone's in Discord just like you. So I see your question, Jason. Internship is heavy to get into game industry. How can somebody that's past that threshold have the opportunity to get industry? So I think you're asking, how do you add value, which is paid value, to an industry? My suggestion, right, would be that you need to always be learning, number one, right? So for example, if you're learning Unity, which is free right now, well, then you're able to add value to game creation and thus be compensated for your work, right? If you are developing art portfolio, which is at a professional level, well, then you're in a position to get paid for your work. If you're learning to create audio at a professional level, then you're in a position to get paid for your work. I think that there's no substitute for making games, okay? And there's no substitute for, it's like my story. So when I got into games, remember, I had never made video games. I was super passionate about games. I'd made lots of board games and tabletop games, and I had an understanding of systems, but I didn't make games until I did. Similarly, I was at an event this weekend called Global Game Jam. And Global Game Jam, there are 580 sites around the world. So if you go to, God, this is such a different talk this morning, but that's okay, because you're a different set of people. If you go to globalgamejam.org, this is where there are 580 sites around the world where everybody made a game in 48 hours, okay? Everybody. And so everybody who was participated has left that weekend with a game that they worked on, with a team, with whatever their skills are. And I just say to all of you, and it's sort of coming at a different angle, but like, you cannot wait for the world to act on you, right? If you want to get into the game industry, Jason, then you have to act on the world and start making games, right? And if you say like don't have the particular skill that's missing, well then that's on you to reach out to people who have complementary skills and be like, I want to make games. This is what I bring to the table. I'm missing this, this, and this. How do we get together? It'd be like in the olden times forming a band, right? Like, how do I form a band? Like, I just play drums, but I need to form a band. And that's work that you need to put yourself out there, right? To do, to be in the game industry nowadays. Because if you don't, you're simply going to be left behind people who make games, right? Because I know if you're asking me, like, okay, you want to get games, you're like, okay, what have you made? Like, show me your stuff. And if I go, if you haven't made any games, like paper games even, well, that'd be like, I want to be a pop singer. And you'd be like, okay, I want you, well, then sing for me. And you're like, oh, I don't actually sing any songs. I don't know any songs. I just want to be a pop singer, right? And so I hope that answers your question, or at least gets you some actionable steps you can take. So, sorry, we went a different direction. It's wonderful, different direction. That's okay. So with me, esports. This is a great example. So today, I'm super involved in esports. Esports didn't exist in this form when I got into games. Like there was no Overwatch League and League of Legends and all of that. There was competition, and we'll sort of talk about the history of esports in a second, but not in the way that it exists now. And it is so fantastic to now have the opportunity, like in my role, to find a place in it, right? Because I've got a chance to make games, have a career, and so my role is helping cultivate esports at USC. And so what does that mean? It means that we have like varsity teams for Hearthstone and for Smash and for League, excuse me, and Overwatch. We have clubs that then support those ecosystems. We have a staff and faculty that work together, and that's sort of career development for people who don't play at a high level, but want to be a part of the craft and business of esports. We also have esports teams come visit us. We do lots of panels. We have lots of competition and events. There's a number of ways to go about it and to participate, even for me, right, to find my place in it. Boop. And games matter to me. And then this is, very personal. So as you picked up from my visual, I am Black. And I lead the gay game professional, so I'm also gay, and games matter to me so much because games have rules that we all share. And so for me growing up, and I'm any of you, I don't know your lives, but when you have a unique identity, whether that be across gender or race, socioeconomic, expression, so on and so forth, you navigate the world with a different set of rules that govern all of your interactions. And for me, games were always a default space where I could simply be and be as good as I was and share an experience with people who are all navigating the exact same set of rules. And I think we all find that we look for default spaces where we can simply then be who we are as unique individuals. So I am just always have been supremely focused not only on creating games, but on affording the opportunity for others to create games and spaces, because I know how meaningful those can be to the people who play them. Other thing I want to be sure to tell you is that you're enough. And it's so funny because this talk's got such a different way, but I'm glad I at least have gotten to this point. There is so much in the way of expectation today. I can't imagine the pressure that young people are under to have like every photo validated by people, every experience like quantified for folks. The example I was talking about this morning was of like, take a photo on a vacation or some experience, right? And if you take two photos and then you post them both, and then one gets more likes than the other, is that a better memory? Right? Was that actually a better experience, like that photo versus the other one, if like 10 times more people like the photo, right? Or are either of the photos actually the experience, or were those actually times that you stopped the experience to take a photo of what was happening to publish later to get the likes? And I think it's so important as you move out into this world that you know that you yourself, are enough, and that that you have to not unhealthily chase, the extrinsic validation of others as you sort of move through this path. It's for me, as a student asked earlier today, and wow, no one really asked me that. So in the end of it all, you didn't become a lawyer. How's your family feel about that? Right? And it really, caused me to reflect, right? That I don't know that their views really ever per se changed or evolved, right? But what I do know is that my own self-esteem, right, in following and iterating along my passion and purpose has grown. And my conviction in that has grown. And that's something that I want for all of you, right? As you go, and I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, right, in the world that you've been presented. And, especially this past year, but maybe different for every individual person. But like, I would say it's fair to say globally, right? We've had a lot of the world acting on us, offering constraint, highlighting our differences in perhaps not the most positive ways, and that it's critical that all of you feel the agency and sort of self accountability to know that you can act on the world because you are valuable and that you're enough as you are. It's super important, I guess, also as you go into this job space, this sort of thing of abundance versus scarcity, because there's rejections, right? Like no one goes undefeated in the job world nowadays. And it's just so important to not define yourself in terms of things that truly you can't control, much like the likes that you may or may not get on an Instagram post or for a TikTok or what have you, that you yourself have value and worth, and that you're enough. Now, I know I've gone way over time now this time. I'm almost tempted to pause like Professor Mendoza and like sort of get into Q&A. This is what a totally different way this today. What do you think? Because I know we're at 2:45, and I want to be sure, to ask. There's lots of questions out there. I want to be sure to actually help people with what they want to know.
I think you're kind of answering them as you go. So I think
okay,
just continue.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, I'll go over here. So I see Gloriel Torres. Do you think AI and AI developers have a place in the game industry? Yes, Gloriel. Gloriel, there's a whole world of AI. Oh my gosh, there's AI scholarships. Yes. I just entered the computer science world and have no idea what to do. I've taken interest in AI. I love video games. Oh man, there's a whole what's it called? A special interest group around AI programmers. Here's who I want you to look up. Let's see here. I want to know. Okay, the person I want you to look up, watch this, is Luke. So look up this person. Make sure I'm spelling it right. Here, I want to solve this real time too. But everyone, okay, I didn't get to it in this presentation, but yes, I mean, all of you, there's a place in and around games. What older people don't, so older people talk about music and television the way that you live games. And so games are such a wonderfully pervasive part of your time and culture that sometimes older people don't appreciate that they're everywhere in your world. And so once again, whatever your passion is, there is probably some interactive portion to it, whether that be around the creation of experiences. Well, let's just talk a little about 4 pillars. So to me, around games, there's 4 basic pillars where you'll find yourself. So one is game design, like, and creation. The other is monetization, right? How do games monetize, and understanding that craft and relationship with customer, with sponsor, monetization. The other is community. And by that I mean like all the discussion that takes place in games, in Discord, in Reddit, in everywhere, on Twitch, right? Like all the discussion now that your generation is fully connected to each other and talks all the time, right? That's its own industry and craft. And the last one, which is super generational, is player customization of experience. So I grew up like, oh, let me go home. Bugs Bunny is home at 3:30. Y'all grew up like, I want to watch when I want to watch what I want to watch. Okay. Even this very talk, we were just talking about before the talk, a lot of people will just watch it when they want to watch it asymmetrically. They don't have to be here. They'll watch it when they want. Totally cool. Right. So there was a whole world around player customization of experience, down to can I pick the dance I want to do in Fortnite, or can I pick the skins I want in League of Legends, to how do I experience content asymmetrically that's its own craft. Long story medium, there's a place for all of you. Specifically, Gloriel, you should go to Gamma Sutra also, but look up, God, I'm trying to find it real time. I'll find it, but if you look up the AI SIG, like the IGDA, I'm gonna just type in the chat here, IGDA AI SIG, like literally there's a whole field of unicorn engineers just like you. Oh my God, favorite games that are not sports related. I love Overwatch. I play it a lot. I love Civilization. I love The Sims. What I love. That's what I love the most right now. I've evolved to become much more of a social gamer. So for me, a big part of the joy of games is my ability to pull friends in or have friends pull me in. So like I love the game that's called Final Fantasy 14 because that was my first MMORPG, like where I was with the group of people and we were, setting goals and going to kill bosses and going on quests together. That's the sort of type of gamer I am. But, that's not like just a right answer. That's just, who I am, Jaylene. It's what I love. I mean, in fact, I play those all more than I play sports games now, which is interesting, right? Because that's where I was sort of what I came from. But like, yeah, nowadays, I'd much rather know, can we play the game together than can we play the game against each other? And that's just where I am in life. Just, one person. Cool. Are there any other questions? Are all the questions answered? Cool. All right. Well, then maybe I'll go back and talk some more. All right. Well, I can talk about more things here if there's no questions. Let's talk about a little history of esports. Oh my God, that's one phone call. Sorry, a lot going on my screen right now. So, so a bit of the evolution of games, a little history just to make everyone more literate with the time we have. So, because this is for you prehistory, many of you weren't born for this. So games used to be isolated destination-based events. So you would go to an arcade, and I figure most people know what an arcade is, but you would go and that's where you would play games. And so you would actually have to play with someone else. You'd have to go to a specific place at a specific time to play games. And so the birth of esports in this era when games were about sort of separating yourselves from each other was a very big deal. So the very first esports competition was a game called Space War. And the prize for that competition was a year's subscription to a magazine called Rolling Stone, which is like a music and culture magazine. It's a very big deal. The next big competition was a game called Space Invaders. And Space Invaders was big because 10,000 people entered it, which I know is not very many people now. It's barely a Twitch feed. But like back then, it was huge because, as you can sort of see in the picture, people didn't see people play games together. It was seen as culturally like an isolated from social activity. Like you would get away from people to go play video games. In the 90s, that was the birth of consoles and the beginning of PC connectivity. So now if you wanted to play a game, well, you could, at first when you got the consoles, you could go to someone's house, and that was a big deal, right? And play games together. But then when PC connectivity came along, you could actually both be home and play games together. And that was a huge deal. Like that only came into being really in the 90s and really much of the aughts, that people could be at home playing the same game together. Probably one of the biggest, changing revelations of inter-house activity since the telephone, right? If you think about like how many activities do you actually do with someone in a different house, right? So gaming, became a very big driver for an activity that you would do at the same time with someone who was not in your home. And that changed games and the reach of games forever. Esports started to grow, and the next thing that happened was so South Korea had a really high adoption of internet across the country and created like PC bongs. And PC bongs were like arcades, but full of PCs. So unlike let me go to this destination and play just with you who's standing next to me and let me play Street Fighter or whatever, now each of these PCs was like an interconnected home, okay? But there were tons of them and they're accessible to the public. And that changed, once again, everything, because so many people could now be a part of this shared experience of playing games, and specifically of playing esports. And so that was yet another boom. And I see your question. I'll just give you the last boom real quick, which is Twitch and Facebook gaming. The ability to stream content so that any of us anywhere are now connected to the experience of esports has been revolutionary, right? So you go all the way from let me meet you in an arcade so I can only play with the person next to me to anytime, anywhere, I can pick up my phone and be connected to the same experience as you. That's happened in a generation. And now that's even the world that you're just beginning with. And of course, we talk about Discord. I see a question from Discord. Well, now, not only can we watch the same thing, right? We're able to have communities and conversations happening all the time, 24/7, about things that we are now watching or playing. And that's normal. It's really great. Question is from Discord, says, do you think simple games like Among Us will become more popular? There isn't a high skill set to play as opposed to Call of Duty, as I say it. Well, yeah, okay. So Among Us is so great because it's a multi-platform. Like I could be on my phone and you could be on your PC and we can play together instantly. Like that's brilliant, right? Obviously, Fortnite knocked down all sorts of walls of cross-platform play. But yeah, Among Us, the number one thing is that it's cross-platform. And that simplicity is the real key. I think that what you can do with Among Us that you can't do as well with Call of Duty, something you can do with Jackbox even, right? Was even maybe more simple, is you can play it right now for free, right? Like if I want to play a game with you and you go, that's cool, I've got time, we could play it pretty much right now for free. If I say, let's play Call of Duty together, well, right, you got to get up off $60 maybe, right? You've got to get your BattleNet set up. I mean, right? Or you have to have a console set up in your house. You got to wait for, you got to do the download, right? Okay, we got to find a time to be on there. There's just a lot more to it. It's very hard if you just walk to someone, some friends and, hey, let's play now. Like Among Us, you can play now. Jackbox, you can play now. And y'all are a now generation, right? Like you want it when you want it. And so I don't know that it's a matter of the skill set as much as the immediacy that makes more people able to play, watch, and understand. Some games that are free, like League of Legends or Dota, don't have the immediacy. There's lots to learn to it, and that's part of their charm, right? It's easy to download them, but it's hard to be any good at them, and that's big too. Abisai Diaz Perez says, how close would you say you are with those you work with? Do you mean how personally close? Like, are you asking, do we hang out outside of work? Or do you mean, are we close in our work together as colleagues? I guess I'd say there is something when you're aligned on a mission with people. And if you think about it, like in any RPG, any party-based RPG or any team sport, that when you have a shared goal, that is a measure of closeness, right? And something that's super cool about us in education is that we sort of have this shared outcome, right? Which is all of you just being your best selves and flourishing and, coming back with t-shirts and stickers from where you worked and all those things. And so I think even though, for example, I really, have only spent a couple days with Dr. Damiana and Professor Mendoza, like, are we close? Yeah, like we're close. And like, if any of these students, y'all, take any of this advice and apply it, we are all like shareholders in the awesome. And it's super vibey. It's a super great feeling, right? So I'm going to say yes. Discord, why do you think Nintendo is so overprotective of their products? Oh, because Nintendo is an experience like going to Disneyland. So there's an expectation of safety that you have when you play Nintendo games, right? And of amicable discourse that is their brand, and that's what it is. That's why it's a Nintendo game, right? That's one of the ways you can tell. There's also a lot of nuance in their controls, and there's lots of great things about Nintendo. And part of that is an expectation of protection. If you say, if you have a nephew or niece or little sister or brother, and they go, I'm gonna go play a game, and they go, what game are you gonna play? You go, I'm gonna play a Nintendo game, right? There's just a different expectation. And they go, oh, I'm gonna go play some PlayStation. I'm gonna play some Xbox. You'll probably ask them, what are you gonna play, right? Because there is a broader range of experiences available over PlayStation and Xbox, right? And for those of you who play online and have ever turned on your headset, yeah, there's a level of discourse that is unique to those platforms that not everyone has the stomach for their families or for their selves even some days. And so being able to go to Nintendo experience is actually very, very positive. It's not a restriction. It's actually like a feature for some people. Be my answer to your question. And they've been around for like 100 years. So they sort of, they sort of know if you ever saw the Reggie talk about the blue ocean, like they aren't really trying to compete with PlayStation and Xbox. They've got a unique lane that works, right? People are super passionate about it and love it, and they lean into that, and that there's nothing wrong with that, right? How great for us as people who play experiences that there's a difference between the offerings. Opinion. Okay, cool. Well, I guess that's all the questions. Let's see, are there more questions? Looking around here. Oh, what are your thoughts on VR gaming? Oh my gosh, you saw my headset, I bet. Okay, so I love VR gaming for a number of reasons. One, VR disrupts a lot of the biases of gender, age, race, ... in its play. It can, right? I think number two, co-presence got, especially now, like I literally hang out with most of my friends in VR because the ability to have that proximity, to be on your left, on your right, in front of you, you know, is meaningful. It's a meaningful human interaction. I think that for some, like overcoming the headset is a thing to make it reach more people. Like not everyone likes putting something over their face for an experience. But conversely, there's people who are already augmenting their experience. Obviously, for example, now VR has controllers, right? Some people I'll see have like full body markers and are really immersing themselves, you know, in the metaverse in a meaningful way. And so I think there's tension on both ends. There's a tension of how can these exceptional experiences be even more metaverse interactive, engaging? And then there's the how do you bring more people into the fold? Because adoption, right? There's lots of barriers. I think to have the best experiences, you need to have high-speed internet for the best co-present experiences. And I think that one of the challenges that the VR gaming industry, that all game industries have, is moving from authorship to service. I think a lot of products historically were very cool authored experiences. Like, look, I'm at the top of a mountain. Look, you know, it's a shooter or whatever. There aren't yet that many experiences in VR that are commonly distributed that make your life better. So, giving a concrete example, like a thing which is more relevant than perhaps VR gaming are things we were doing for like VR health, like pain management. So they found sometimes in some cases that they put people in VR that they were able to manage pain, like in hospitals, like people who are enduring chronic pain better by having VR experiences that move them away from the here and now into virtual experiences for their mind. Like it's a real thing. And I think there's a real opportunity for VR, you know, a positive outcome to make people's lives better. And then inside of that, there will be gaming and play. But I don't think that necessarily in that case, the gaming leads the way in the functionality. I think even in business, right? Like the applications of VR, gaming is fun. Like I love it, but not necessarily leading the charge. Questions for Discord. What were your thoughts on Mixer shutting down? I feel like nothing can beat Twitch. I don't think anything has to beat Twitch. I think that there's choices, right? I think that Facebook game is cool. Twitch is cool. I think that people, if you think about service, just want to connect and enjoy the content, right? And so whether you find that content coming through Amazon's pipeline or Google's pipeline or Facebook's ecosystem or some open source system, which no one talks about, but what if some open source shared thing that we can all share? But that's a whole nother talk for another day. I think that, yeah, once again, I don't think anything has to per se beat Twitch. Twitch is a corporation that's part of Amazon. It's not, I mean, I think people will find better ways to share and connect experiences. Even people who are on Twitch, for example, they'll put VODs on YouTube because that's the best way to serve their asymmetric content, right? This talk, right? We're talking about this live on Zoom, but it'll reside obviously somewhere else so that you can experience it asymmetrically. I think young people like yourselves will think more holistically about content experiences and come up with things that we couldn't even think of that will make this seem very kludgy the way things are now. Opinion. I'm scanning all the windows for questions. Favorite game that worked on? Favorite game I worked on still, yes. Well, I was talking about, God, Global Game Jam this past weekend was fun, but most ever Madden, because that changed my life. So Madden changed my life, changed my family's life, made it all possible. That was the most fun because I was aware that my life was happening, not just the game itself, but my actual life purpose. And I'd been once again playing electric football, which is before all your times, and Stratomatic and paper games, and watching football literally my whole life. So being in the position to help create those experiences for a new generation was the best. So one of the things it gets talked about a lot, it's there's a Netflix documentary on it called High Score. I helped introduce African-American players to the game, right? And I didn't think I'd be talking about it 25 years hence, but even back then, I was like, oh, I want young people like me to be able to see themselves when they play the game, to be represented, to exist. And so, yeah, that's my favorite. That's my fave. It's all still on my desk. Have you thought about making, let's say, a small organization targeted towards students in low-income communities so they can receive information about gaming careers? So an organization targeted towards right. Paolo, this is a great question. I think so interesting about focus versus getting the best results. I don't know that you would want to necessarily segment who gets information on gaming careers by income, right? I understand that lower income people don't get the same information and access, but I guess it's a matter of, do you want to, there's a number of ways, there's no single solution, right? But there's a matter of bringing the information and distributing it there, or bringing the people to the information. It was early in this talk, right? Do I, lead Caleb to Gamma Sutra, or do I find a way for Gamma Sutra to exist where the student is? There's no wrong answers. I think my point would be that accessibility to information is such a huge barrier. I think we're talking in earlier talks about internet access, right? For example, all of us are here because we have the privilege of internet access, or at least there's one person on a phone. So, or you're on a phone making it work, right? The divide which is happening because of different people's access to internet is I feel going to be something we're going to be talking about for a generation. We're not talking about now because we're all trying to get a vaccine, but even getting a vaccine, if you don't have internet right now, well, think about the access to signups or to anything. Anyway, not to digress. I think it's great to bring internet access and to bring information to not only low income. I mean, I would say, well, income is one axis. I'd almost call it sort of first generation, right? If you don't have the systemic support of friends or parents or family friends directing you towards successful outcomes, or schools, right? Going to school, right? If you're in the first generation, there's a lot to figure out, right? There's a lot of of just gymnastics to navigate because you don't have that context. And so I think that, yeah, that'd be huge to have resources for people who simply don't know. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Paula. Yeah, you see where I'm headed with this, but yes is the answer to your question. But I think that first generation takes many forms, of which income is a key indicator, but not the defining one. A question was good. How do we convince our parents and older adults in general about gaming career? Oh, that's great. You don't. Like, this is what I was talking about before. God, this came up earlier, and I'll answer it the same way, which is this, which is that if you let someone else run your race, at some point you won't have any race left to run, right? And I was asked in terms of my family and my legal career, which they'd still be happy with, and I'm grown. You cannot wait to live your life. You have to have agency and accountability for how you spend your time, who you spend your time with, your ethics and values as young adults. Like, I mean, all of you, unless someone is like a Doogie Howser prodigy, are grown, and your values are yours now. And you may never get the validation or the likes, so to speak, the Instagram likes on your career. But what you can have is conviction in your own values, right? And I mean, you could spend a lifetime trying to get someone else to like your photo, as it were. I do not recommend it. I recommend that you know what games mean to you. You know what they mean to your generation. You know what they mean as an industry. You really need to go focus on finding your place or making your place in it. Not on dragging other people into an understanding that you already have. Yeah. Yes, Anita. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it shouldn't be. But there is work to be done, obviously, in democratizing, right? Access to knowledge. Gosh, I mean, and even more so, I mean, we'll just talk about it today, sort of not go too far down the road of philosophy, but because people have monetized difference so effectively, right? Because if we post something on Twitter, it's much more engaging for us to argue about it. For me to go, I agree, you're awesome, Anita. That's a great insight, right? It's just more monetizable for us to go, like, to have a hot take and for us to go back and forth. And that affects adversely, right, people who need or would benefit from more knowledge and resources. Okay, because you have to be really incentivized for everyone to know more and to have more access and to have more opportunity for growth. So there's work to be done. I'll put that lightly. My favorite game or studio, current or upcoming. Favorite game studio. Okay, I'm not avoiding this question. I'll just tell you the truth. So for me, in my life, so game studios aren't studios who make product, they're people and friends, right? And you're sort of like asking me who my best friend is, and like, I love all my friends, they're all different, right? And even me, and this maybe being a big softie, the idea of putting them in competition with each other and like stack ranking them is something I would have done when I was like super aggro and younger. But now that I'm older, I'm like, no, everyone's awesome. They're doing their best. That's how I feel. What's the favorite thing to come out of my, this I know, Jaylene. My favorite thing is, and I talked about this in an interview this week, is it's my coaching tree. It's the people who I've mentored who have gone on to do and create things that I couldn't even imagine. That's my favorite thing, like seeing them like thrive and grow. And I'm sure the professors can explain this all to you. Like, it's super fulfilling, like that, seeing people be their own best selves. I like to think that we're sort of like when you plant a plant in the ground and then you put that stake in it so that it grows, in the right direction, but then it's just got to go where it goes. Like, being in education is sort of like that, where you're like a stake and you get them going towards the sunlight, but then they got to be the flower they are, and da 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 da. And when you see it, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And you remember your time as a stake, in it, but they're their own flower doing their thing, but you feel a part of the process. That's my favorite thing by far. How are we on time, Professor Mendoza? Where are we at?
Well, I think we're just about ready to wrap up here. It's
Okay.
an hour and a quarter.
Okay, well, let me put my contact info up here because I didn't even get to all you missed so many slides, people. But here we go. This is me, because asymmetrically, if you want to stay in touch, you have more questions. I know that everyone isn't for direct communication. Some of you are thoughtful, some of you are quiet, some of you just need time to formulate your thoughts. Like, these are the ways to reach me. I welcome it, right? Like, I literally see your success as my success. I'm super into it. I'm thankful once again, Professor Mendoza, Dr. Damiani, Benny, of course, again. Oh, and our captioner. Thank you for captioning. Once again, accessibility and equity. Be thankful that you have a school that cares, okay? That you can take this information in caption if that's what's best for you, okay? Like, do not take that for granted. Like be thankful. It's thoughtful and awesome for you to be able to get the information the way that's best for you. Period. Yeah, of course. Yes, Jason. Yes, you can. Yeah. So with that, then I'll stop talking. But yeah, thank you again, Bakersfield College. Thank you for having me. Super appreciate it. I mean, I hope we can do it in person someday, sometime, right? Like I'm not far. I'm in LA, right? I want to go to Bakersfield. It's cool. But yeah, we make it work as we can in these times, right? So here we are.
All right. Thank you, Gordon. It was a great talk. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I totally different than the morning. I know, right? Like, it just went different way, but I think that's okay, right?
Sure.
I think that's all right.
Sure. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you'll be with us. We have other distinguished speakers. Let's all thank Gordon Bellamy either in our thoughts.
Oh, I know, and I Discord. Oh, goodbye Discord and Facebook. I hope everyone felt equity, right? And Zoom. That's so cool. That's so neat. Just come wherever it's right for you. That's awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.